Have you ever tried a simple experiment in your relationship where you decide to stop initiating intimacy for a while just to see what happens? And then, suddenly, nothing happens. Days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into a month of silence. You begin to wonder if she even thinks about intimacy the way you do, or if the attraction has simply vanished into thin air. For most men, this realization is confusing and deeply painful. It starts raising dark questions about chemistry, her past, and whether the woman you love has quietly checked out of the relationship. But here is the truth that will surprise you. The reason women rarely initiate has very little to do with a lack of attraction. In fact, many men unknowingly create the exact psychological dynamic that discourages a woman from ever taking the first step. You are accidentally training her to stay passive, and until you understand the invisible mechanics of her desire, you will continue to be the only one pulling the weight of the relationship. Today, we are decoding the female psychological blueprint of initiation and showing you how to flip the script so she becomes the one reaching for you. To understand why she isn't initiating, you first have to look at the pattern of behavioral conditioning you've likely established. Imagine a typical evening where the two of you are sitting on the couch. She leans into you, seeking simple closeness. You wrap your arm around her, and she rests her head on your shoulder. It feels warm and natural. But then, almost reflexively, your hand starts moving. The kiss gets deeper. Within minutes, the innocent cuddle has turned into an attempt to push for sex. If this happens every single time you touch her, a dangerous pattern forms in her mind. Touch equals sex. Cuddling equals an expectation. Over time, she begins to avoid physical affection altogether, not because she doesn't want you, but because she wants to avoid the sexual negotiation she isn't ready for yet. She stops initiating even a simple hug because she knows where it's going to lead, and she doesn't want to deal with the guilt of saying no later. When every small gesture of warmth becomes a doorway to a bedroom demand, affection disappears first. And when the casual affection dies, her desire to initiate intimacy dies with it. You have created a high-pressure environment where her only defense is to remain unreachable. This leads to a deeper realization about the fundamental differences in how desire works. Most men grow up believing that desire is a spontaneous switch. You see something attractive, you feel a surge of arousal, and you want to act. This is the male biological default. But for the vast majority of women, desire is responsive. It doesn't appear out of nowhere in the middle of doing laundry or answering emails. It grows slowly out of the emotional atmosphere, the context of the day, and the safety of the relationship. This concept, known in psychology as responsive desire, means she becomes turned on during the process of intimacy, not before it. Men often approach sex as desire first, intimacy second. For women, it's connection first, arousal second, and then desire follows. When a man rushes the process, skipping the emotional buildup and the sensory exploration, he is effectively trying to start an engine without any fuel. Ironically, when you learn to slow down and allow the tension to breathe without forcing an outcome, her desire has the space to actually ignite. Biology plays a massive, unspoken role in this pursuit-evasion dynamic. We cannot talk about initiation without talking about the primary driver of libido, testosterone. Men produce significantly higher levels of testosterone, often 7 to 10 times more than women on average. This hormone is directly linked to the brain's reward and motivation centers. In men, it creates a sense of sexual urgency. It's an internal push that demands action. In contrast, female testosterone levels are much lower, making their baseline drive less about impulsive pursuit and more about environmental receptivity. While a man feels a biological push from within, a woman often responds to a psychological invitation from without. Understanding this hormonal gap helps you realize that she isn't broken or uninterested. She is simply operating on a different biological frequency. Her system requires safety and the right emotional climate to activate, whereas yours is built for immediate action. Beyond biology sits the most critical factor for female desire: emotional safety. For a woman, the bedroom is not a separate room. It is an extension of every conversation you had or didn't have during the day. If the day was filled with coldness, ignored bids for attention, or unresolved conflict, her emotional system remains locked. You cannot treat her like a stranger all day and expect her to be a lover at night. Many men unintentionally overlook the emotional foundation, treating intimacy as an isolated event. But for her, desire grows in an environment where vulnerability feels safe and her presence feels valued beyond just her physical body. When she feels seen, respected, and heard, her psychological defenses lower. Only then can she relax enough to move from a state of functioning to a state of feeling. If you want her to initiate, you have to be the man who makes her feel emotionally secure long before the sun goes down. We also have to account for the biological rhythms that men often ignore completely. A woman's libido is not a flat line, it is a tide that rises and falls with her hormonal cycle. During ovulation, when estrogen peaks, many women experience a natural surge in libido and confidence. They become more flirtatious and more likely to initiate. However, during the premenstrual phase, energy levels drop, and physical discomfort or irritability can make the very idea of intimacy feel like a burden. It isn't about a lack of attraction to you. It's about a physiological shift in her energy. When you understand these cycles, you stop interpreting her fluctuations as personal rejection. You start to see her desire as a living, breathing rhythm that requires patience and timing rather than a constant demand. Social conditioning and the risk of rejection also play a silent role in why she stays passive. For generations, the cultural script has been that men pursue and women are pursued. Even in the modern world, many women feel a subconscious fear that being too aggressive or taking too much initiative will be judged negatively. There is also the fear of rejection. While men are used to the ego-bruising "no" for a woman, being rejected when she initiates can feel like a direct attack on her femininity and desirability. To avoid the vulnerability of being turned down, many women choose the safer route. They let the man lead. It protects them from the sting of personal rejection. If you want her to take the risk of initiating, she needs to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that her advances will be met with absolute enthusiasm and appreciation, not just a casual, okay. Finally, we have to talk about the silent killer of initiation, the mental load and exhaustion. In many modern relationships, the mental labor of managing the household, the kids, the schedules, and the emotional needs of the family falls disproportionately on the woman. When a brain is overloaded with a never-ending to-do list, it produces cortisol, the stress hormone. High cortisol levels are the natural enemy of libido. At the end of a long day, she isn't thinking about sex, she's thinking about sleep. Her body is prioritizing recovery over arousal. If sex feels like just another task she has to complete for you, she will never initiate it. She will wait for you to bring it up so she can decide if she has enough energy left to comply. When you share the mental load, when you take responsibilities off her plate, and when you reduce her stress, you are literally clearing the psychological space for her desire to return. Changing this dynamic is not about convincing her or arguing about fairness. You cannot negotiate desire. You have to change the environment. First, remove the pressure. Start giving her affection, hugs, kisses, and touch without ever escalating to the bedroom. Make it safe for her to be close to you again. Second, slow down. Build anticipation throughout the day with words and looks that have no immediate bill attached to them. Third, reinforce her effort. When she does take a small step, a suggestive text, or a lingering touch, show her that you noticed and that it made your day. And most importantly, lead with your own self-improvement and emotional support. When she sees a man who is centered, supportive, and non-needy, her natural biological instinct to draw closer to him will take over. The truth is, a woman who feels safe, relaxed, and emotionally connected doesn't want to resist intimacy. She wants to share it. When the pressure is gone and the connection is real, she won't just wait for you to start the engine. She will be the one who reaches for the keys. If you've been feeling like you're the only one trying, it's time to stop chasing and start building the right environment.